Broadcast is live.
Hey, welcome everyone to another rendition of Steampunk Academy's virtual science happy hour. So this week we have a little bit more of a treat for you because you don't have to listen to me and Sky ramble the whole hour. Instead, we have some guest interviewers here. We've got Jaimi Butler and Bonnie Baxter from the Great Salt Lake Institute, and they're going to be interviewing their best frenemy over here, Dr. Eric Boyd from Montana State University. And it's going to be a pretty exciting talk. They're going to be talking about microbes in extreme climates, the origin of life, and all sorts of other deep, interesting, tidbits of the world. So, yeah.
Yeah. And this week we are sponsored by Ketos Brewing. Let's get my blurb up. Sorry. So Ketos, we've got the American Lager and the Northeastern IPA.
How about the Blonde Ale?
Sorry.
I have two drinks.
What are you
drinking?
I've got a double IPA and also some seltzer water that's in this awesome growler.
That's the hard seltzer, Jaimi?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
It can stick on my mustache.
Yeah.
The Blonde Ale.
Nice.
I got a trusty whiskey drink here. And you see my cup with little cowboy boots on it?
Oh my God.
That makes me think of the old adage, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting about.
Yeah. This is from my father-in-law who literally grew up in the middle of nowhere in Idaho and gave it to me.
That's beautiful.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, good here. Heirloom.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I like it.
So just so you all know, Ketos is open. Their to-go store is open. They're at 608 West 700 South in the Greenery District. They're open Monday through Saturday from noon to 8. And speaking of a ale and a lager, those are two different kinds of yeast to make a different kind of beer. And neither of those microbes would do very well in the environments that we're going to talk about now.
Hey, I do need to tell you, Eric, that John Spear's on.
Uh-oh.
You could be in trouble, man. He's going to be sending me questions.
I
Yeah,
can
if
handle
anyone
it.
wants to post questions either on the Facebook or the YouTube live feed, we'll be watching those comments, and so we'll get those out there later too. So, well, cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
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 Thank you. Excellent.
Right,
Right.
take it, science.
We'll get this thing started. Good. Eric, I really want to know how you got, how you started at football and then became a professor. Like, that trajectory is unusual.
It's not so complicated. Yeah, when I was in high school, I loved football. I loved baseball, and I loved it too much, and I blew out my arm, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
How do you use a pipetter?
My arms still work. They just don't work like they used to.
Hmm.
I wake up in the middle of the night with my shoulder dislocated every once in a while. Kind of gross.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gross.
But you know, the cool thing about that, because I was going to be a professional quarterback, right?
Right.
And then that kind of thwarted that idea, and I went to college and wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because, of course, you're going to make a ton of money and you can fix people's problems like what I had. And fortunately, met a couple of people, really inspirational people that got me excited about microbiology, and so the rest is history.
Hey, Eric, I want to know how your salary is different as like a professor versus a professional football player.
Ooh.
Oh, I make way more. Yeah, Montana State really rewards their It's not about the money. I do what I do because I love it, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I know. I feel that. I can feel that about you. Do you think you swear now more than you did when you played football? Swearing
For
as a
sure.
scientist? Like if you were to graph swearing over time?
I was swearing at my computer. I was swearing at my computer all day today because I couldn't get this damn set of sequences to align the way that I thought that they should. And hey, whatever, it worked, and I got it figured out.
Is swearing an important part of science?
When you're dealing with graduate students, it's really important. You gotta show them one of them, and that's where the potty mouth starts as a graduate student, where you have to learn to deal with frustration, and you start swearing. And one of the keys to successful professorship is in mentoring is making sure everybody realizes you're just one of them. So yes, you got to swear.
Swearing brings you right down there.
Yes,
and I have to agree, Bonnie, too, because I worked with brine shrimp harvesters that spend their time on Great Salt Lake. And I was told when I got the job that I had to learn to swear like a sailor. And it is improved my career in science.
Your trajectory is really interesting too. If you could you plot your trajectory of working on a brine shrimp boat to now mentoring undergraduates in research? Could you plot your swearing over time?
I could plot my swearing over time, but I will tell you the peak happens when you have an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah. Yeah, regardless of career.
Regardless of career. Because I have one of those.
Yeah, I get it.
And he's an asshole.
Wait, an 18-year-old asshole?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shocking.
But I definitely agree, though, it's kind of our language of love, the swearing parts of things and it's silly, but it works for us, and it works for our students too.
Yeah, but
go
ahead, Eric.
One of the greatest things is when you go into a classroom, and so I have the opportunity to teach both graduate students and undergraduates, and in a graduate student class, and you drop an F-bomb or say shit or whatever, it's like no big deal, right?
Right.
But then when you do it in an undergraduate class, it's like all of a sudden you're cool.
Yeah, you're elevated. No,
and now we can relate with each other. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you're elevated. No, I think it's very true. We've spent some time with you, Eric, out at Great Salt Lake. Some lovely time. I was looking for some pictures, and I was trying to remember the first time we went to lake together, and you mentioned it was when we went to the salt ponds together. And so I was thinking that must be like 2015. So I was looking through all my pictures from 2015, and it wasn't. So I went back a year, and then I went back another year, and it was 2010.
So a while ago.
10 years ago.
Can I show you the picture?
You were a baby. You were a total baby. And we found a picture. Yeah, we found a picture. You want to show the picture, Jaimi? This is especially, this is an important one. It's when I first knew you, when you were a young scientist.
And I think I mentioned this at one point, you guys. Some people do call me the dude.
Yeah.
But I actually have to be really careful, because the real dude, Jeff Bridges, lives here in my neck of the woods, and you don't want to be. You got to be careful. You don't want to be stepping on his toes.
Well, he might sue you for wearing that sweater. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a nice sweater.
We changed your name now. You're the Big Leboitsky.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think some of my lab is actually online right now. And,
Take a screenshot.
Or you can just email me. I'll send it to you.
The funny thing about that is, if you go to my website, which I let them design, I didn't do it. I don't know how to do any of this stuff, And the name of my website is, I study geobiology, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about what that is. But my website address is geoboidology. So they play on words, and
So they'll dig that.
They'll dig it for sure. Nice.
That's awesome. Well, it just felt like we should have maybe have served White Russians tonight, but that's okay. So I want to ask you a little bit about what you see in Great Salt Lake, because you work in the extreme environs of Yellowstone so much, and there's these acid pools and these really hot places, geothermal stuff, and the one thing I never find in Yellowstone is high salinity. And it's like you had to leave there to get that, So Jaimi and I really appreciate that we could be that for you, that we could fill like the void of extremes for you and give you Great Salt Lake.
Well, yeah, a little bit of background. We study life in cold systems. So underneath glaciers, we have projects in Iceland. We just got a new project funded in the Canadian High Arctic to look at, this is cool, brine flows underneath glaciers. The deep sub.
Sorry, I almost fainted.
Yeah, the deep. We work in the deep subsurface. We work in acidic hot springs that are boiling battery acid. And yeah, the one thing that was missing from my life at that point was we needed some salt.
Yeah.
And Great Salt Lake provides in plenty. And yeah, it's just been a lot of fun to work there. There's a lot more work to obviously do, but I think we've had a lot of fun for the last 10 years, publishing a lot of papers and seeing a lot of the cool aspects of Great Salt Lake.
Absolutely. Jaimi has spent her career at Great Salt Lake, and she maybe is, I don't know, I think the best person in the world to introduce anybody to Great Salt Lake. But Jaimi, if people are out there and they're like, what the hell would I find in Great Salt Lake, especially Eric's students who, are in Bozeman and they don't want to leave Bozeman, like what would you tell them to entice them to come here?
I would talk about brine shrimp. They're my favorite thing ever, everybody. And right now I'm going to pull out a couple of pictures because I think brine shrimp are so awesome that I really have spent my life studying them.
Yep.
I'm trying to share my screen.
Hey, Jaimi, I know you love brine shrimp, but I just got the simplest question. What do they eat?
They eat any kind of microorganisms that are in the water.
Exactly.
Which is awesome. But do you know what else is really cool about them, Eric, that I've been trying to tell people about? Okay, so they look like this when they're born. When they get a little bit older, they start to get all of these little thoracopods that are on them. And you can tell this is a teenager because it says FU on it. It's fuck you. But the most important part is that they know how to boogie really good.
You just played a little dance music.
And the second most important part is that brine shrimp have two penises. And I can't believe that people don't talk about this more because their penises are eversible. So this one is not eversed. This one is an eversed penis. And what happens is essentially the inside becomes the outside to make it grow.
Have you ever heard of an eversible penis? That's really spectacular.
No, this is why I study microorganisms. Come on.
Yeah.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Jaimi.
I come in at work and she's got like brine shrimp porn on the computer.
Unbelievable.
I'm not kidding. Well, so Eric, I have a shot that I want to show you that makes me really happy. If I can share my screen. Do I get to share? No. Application? Yes. Okay. All right. Going for it. I want to share this picture right here because this is what Great Salt Lake looks like from space. That makes me super happy because it reminds you that it's a part of our planet. And I really like to study salty places and think about life that can survive over time in the salt, because that makes me think a lot about maybe all that salt on Mars and maybe where life used to be. So, Eric, I want to talk a little bit about origin of life and how extreme places might give us some insight into how life evolved on our planet and how life might be elsewhere.
Yeah, well, clearly one of the things I'm most interested in, and the members of my research group, but life emerged on Earth, say 3.8 to 4 billion years ago, and the earliest evidence that we have of life is in the form of fossilized stromatolites. So these are about 3.5 billion years old. And one cool connection to the Great Salt Lake and kind of how Bonnie got me hooked, actually, was the Great Salt Lake hosts one of the largest expanse of living stromatolites today. So somewhere on the order of 30% of that lake bottom is covered in stromatolites. And so what are stromatolites? They're these organic carbonate mineral structures. They look like these big domes. Some of them are the size in some of them in Great Salt Lake are the size of Volkswagen Beetles. And what's neat about them, and Bonnie's taken me to all of these places to see them, and some of her colleagues at the Utah Geological Survey. What's neat about these formations, these stromatolitic formations, is that they don't form on their own. They form in concert, kind of in a dance with microbes, so microbial mats. And so one of the cool things about Great Salt Lake is it allows us a mechanism, kind of a window, a portal into the past to understand what kind of processes might have been important, biological processes might have been important,
right,
in generating these stromatolites that were then preserved in the rock record that we have dated at 3.54 billion years. And so we've learned a lot from the stromatolites in Great Salt Lake. And one of the cool things, and of course, they're preserved all throughout the rock record. We have some in our backyard that are 360 million years ago up in the Bridger Mountains, some down in the Medicine Bow Mountains down in Wyoming that a good friend of mine, Dave Lageson, studies that are about 0.8 to 2 billion years old. So there's a whole range of different ages for these things when they got preserved. But one of the neat things to think about is, when life emerged on Earth, roughly 3.84 billion years ago, it emerged in an environment that's so incredibly different than any environment that you and I have ever seen in our lives. And, imagine an environment where, continents are tiny. Continents haven't really started to amalgamate yet. There is no soil on those continents. That took time to develop. That's a biological process to develop soil. So you have...
Oh, wait a minute. No soil.
No soil, right? So
Yeah.
and there are no trees. Trees didn't evolve until 800 million years ago. Oceans were bright green because they were so enriched in iron. That iron ultimately fell out of the oceans, precipitated and forms the economic ore deposits that we mine today for making automobiles and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
The sun was about 30% as bright as it was today. The moon was huge because it had just been blasted off of Earth, 700 million years ago. And so you saw this huge moon, right, in the sky, kind of like what you see on full moons when they're first arising over the sky. And so a very different environment that life emerged in. And one of the most important differences, and the one that I think gets me most excited, is this life, unlike every single form of life that you can see with your naked eye. Okay. And I don't care what environment you go to, all of that life is ultimately supported by light energy, by photosynthesis. Okay. You're supported by photosynthesis. You just don't realize it. But ultimately, all the food you eat derives from plants or animals that eat plants. On early Earth, that process didn't exist. And so trying to understand what that life on early Earth was doing, how it was able to be sustained, we know it was there. And we know that oxygenic photosynthesis didn't emerge until, say, 3.2, 3.0 billion years ago.
Right.
What was that life doing for that 600 million years on Earth? And it turns out it was eating minerals or products formed from minerals, things like hydrogen gas or rocket fuel. So a very different world. And it's one that I find fascinating, and that fortunately NASA finds fascinating, which is where we get the majority of our money to study. So it's fun to think about these kind of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to show you my, I want to show you how stromatolites form for a second. Because Eric, at Great Salt Lake, we found some cyanobacteria, which we expected forming mats, but we also found some diatoms, right? So I'm gonna find my share again, share my screen. And so I think it's important that we have a visual about how this might work. So imagine cyanobacteria are floating around, and they make this sticky goo, this EPS, this extra polymeric substance. Let's think of that as like sticky icing, yeah. And then diatoms lay down there and they hang everything together, and then the next thing you know, you got a rock. So that's what I think happened.
Oh, that was entirely pathetic, man.
Isn't that beautiful? I really am working on that.
So you left out so many important details, Bonnie. Like here's when I explain this to my students, it's this simple. I hope everybody brushes your teeth in the morning. Okay?
Otherwise, you got a biofilm.
And the reason you do that is because of the microbes. You've got billions, trillions of them in your mouth. And microbes love to stick to surfaces.
There you go.
And they're sticky because of that exact compounds that you said, the extracellular polymeric substances. Well, those microbes stick to your teeth, and you're brushing your teeth to get those microbes to release and get them out of there. But that same process is really responsible for the formation of these stromatolites. And so you find these things in well-lit, today at least, in well-lit environments where sand is getting washed over the top of these microbial mats, and that sticky goo is sitting there binding up those sand grains. And then one of the important aspects of these stromatolites, and certainly the ones that we find in Great Salt Lake, is that they actually cement themselves together. They actually precipitate calcium carbonate, which, think about that as like a concrete that solidifies that. And that's all good for preserving that structure in the rock record. It's not so good if you're a cyanobacterium and you want to grow. And so they grow upward. They form these concentric layers. And sometimes, as you know, a buddy of mine down at Colorado School of Mines studies stromatolites that form in hot springs. And there it's not carbonate minerals that are forming, it's a silicate mineral. And so different processes, but that's all biologically mediated, and it's pretty neat, right? And so you can study these extant communities, these living communities now, which are relatively rare on Earth. But in places like Great Salt Lake, they're not rare at all. And it's just a really cool opportunity. I bet you that like nobody in Salt Lake City knows that these actually form in Great Salt Lake. It's like
everybody that Jaimi talks to knows.
Yeah, I bet so. Should be a national heritage site, or a World Heritage site.
Yeah, no kidding. Tell the mining companies that. So, Jaimi, what would you say to somebody who said Great Salt Lake is shrinking, and why does that matter?
I first just want to beat my head on the table. That's what I'll do first. Because Great Salt Lake is shrinking. We're diverting most of the water out of Great Salt Lake. And not only does that, let me just give you a demonstration here. Not only does that affect my brine shrimp, that they mate in Great Salt Lake and use, can't see. they mate in Great Salt Lake in great numbers, and it leads to like a lot of our economy, and it feeds millions of birds, but it's also exposing lots and lots of shorelines and increasing the air pollution in the Salt Lake Valley, and also probably decreasing snowpack in the Salt Lake Valley, and in the mountains of the greatest snow on earth. And it's a bummer because there's like this quality of life that goes with it, and there's also the economy that goes with that, and recreation. And we haven't really started even to see the effects of climate change yet, which is going to really impact Great Salt Lake. And so I would say Great Salt Lake is shrinking because of us.
Yeah.
Did you see my brine shrimp porn?
I can't see it. Are you sharing?
We did. I did see
trying.
it. Oh God, here we go.
Oh, here she goes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hey Eric, when you brine shrimp love each other very much.
It takes. It's very quick.
You know, my mom would be appalled right now. She brought me up to not pay any attention to this kind of garbage. You know, I have, this is the coolest thing. So when I was down visiting Bonnie and Jaimi, I think maybe 4 years ago, we grabbed a couple of these stromatolites, and don't worry, there's like 700 squared of these things, but brought this thing home, and I have it in an aquarium sitting on my desk at work. And it's like the most it's like calming to watch brine shrimp just glide through. And so we have this stromatolite, and it's covered in this microbial mat. And the only thing for 4 years added distilled water. It's a completely.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, look at them all. I hate to say it, Jaimi, but your stromatolite's uglier than mine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's really got a gift. He's got a gift.
But I think what Jaimi said is so right. It's like if you like to ski, then you like the mountains around Salt Lake City.
Right.
If you like the mountains just in general, Salt Lake City is a great place. And you know, as soon as you start exposing those shorelines and the dust that's going to generate, and actually not just dust, there's a ton of, you know, Great Salt Lake's a terminal lake, as you guys well know. Everything that flows in there generally stays, and that includes things like mercury and other nasty metals that you don't want anything to do with. You want them to stay in the lake. You don't want that dust blowing around. And we're doing this to ourselves. And so in 5 or 10 or however many years it is before we start realizing what it is that we've done, is it going to be too late? I don't know.
Yeah, the current trajectory has been modeled by actually an external consultant company is working for the state, and they worked on Mono Lake, and they have several projections for 10 years from now, and one is if we do nothing, and one is if we activate some level of conservation, and one is if we're super aggressive about conservation, which is not likely to happen in Utah. And none of those scenarios result in the lake going up in elevation. All of those scenarios result in the lake going down. The worst case scenario is like almost 12 feet down in 10 years. And the least is like 1.7 feet, I think. So all of those scenarios are downward. And like Jaimi said, like it starts with water diversions for population growth and agriculture. And you don't think of Utah as a farming state really, but we grow alfalfa, and then in a real climate expansive way send it to China. So we're growing food for Chinese animals that we then slaughter and bring back to the US. I don't really understand it, but a lot of the water diverted from Great Salt Lake is going to alfalfa, which isn't even a crop that's used in the US. So it's a little shocking what's happening, and now comes climate change. And as the temperature increases, that dust you mentioned is not only going to cause this awful air quality, but it lands on the snow and decreases the albedo, the reflectivity, and that changes the timing of the snow melt. And the snow melt is critical to recharge our water, our groundwater. That's where we get our water from. So all at one time, we threaten the ski industry, we threaten air quality, and we threaten like our water supply. So the lake, like, even if you don't like how many birds, Jaimi, 10 million birds that come to Great Salt Lake, even if you're like birds, like you got to care about either air quality or skiing or drinking water. Like one of those things has to matter to you, you know?
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But it's really no different than, than the way that we're treating the planet in so many other ways. And, I was in this, on this National Academy panel where we were discussing plastics. And, so think about this. Plastics, we engineer plastics that don't degrade. And that's great, right? Because then we can leave our chairs out in the weather and so on and so forth. They don't degrade, but they don't degrade ever.
Right. Ever.
So we're creating things that never return to the biocycle, to the earth. I mean, how crazy is that? And we're all doing it. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about it, and yet I buy things that are made of plastic. And one of the real startling things to me was when I was at this panel, and you can access this report. You don't have to take my word for it, but you had people from 3M and all of the major companies that are making plastics, their lead engineers saying, yeah, we really don't know what to do with this stuff. We can't recycle it. There's nothing we can do. Burn it.
Jeez.
Not good. And so, I don't know. We all need to rethink the way that we're living.
You guys are making me drink.
I know. I feel like, wait, I feel like we need a happy picture. Hang on. Let me. Happiness.
See, one of the things that's true about working with Jaimi and Bonnie is you can't trust them. That's something up your sleeve. No question about it.
Oh man, and Jaimi and I aren't always happy. Sometimes usually we're happy, but we don't like to get bummed out like this, man. Like you shouldn't be talking like this to us.
Yeah, well, somebody's gotta state the obvious, right?
Yeah, I guess sometimes it is true that sometimes we get really Eric. If you're the problem though is that we can't ever decide like who's bitchier than the other person, and so our students actually labeled it. They labeled us one time. But mostly this is because nobody can figure out which one of us works for the other one, nor can we, by the way. You should really keep us happy, Eric. Tell us a happy story.
Tell us a funny field story, Eric.
Yeah.
A funny field story?
Yeah. Is you have fun in the field? Is that fun? Wait.
No, I'm pretty much only... she dropped off. That's the problem with living in a big city. Your bandwidth is crap. I had this graduate student in the lab once. Her name was Melody Lindsay, and she was from Hawaii, and she did her undergraduate at Princeton. And I think, she flew from Hawaii to Princeton and never experienced anything in between. And she was really interested in hydrogen gas and how microbes use hydrogen gas. And so she decided to come and work with us and work on a project that we had out of Yellowstone. And she literally, it was like she was as green as they get. She pulls into the field camp. We were down there camping for about a week. And she shows up and we say, get ready. we're going to go out into the field, and we hike into some backcountry hot springs because we can't work at the hot springs that are on the boardwalk for obvious reasons.
Right.
And we're walking through this forest, and it's all good on a path that's not really, it's not a path. It's just, bushwhacking through the forest, and we pop out of the forest. And when you know something's watching you, something's watching you.
Yeah, you do.
And we pop out of the forest, and sure enough, there was two adolescent grizzlies that had been following us as we walked.
Right. Jaimi, you won't believe what Eric just told me.
Yeah, craziness.
They ran into grizzlies. You missed it. You missed the build-up.
I'm more scared of white males, than I am grizzly bears. I mean, you have a larger chance of getting into problems dealing with a white male ever will with a grizzly bear. But here
I've been attacked more by white males, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys just proved my point. And you both live in the West, and the reality is that Melody thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yes, she did.
I thought for sure she was gonna take the next flight out, and she stayed in the lab and just continued to seriously kick ass. I think she left the lab with close to 14 or 15 publications out.
Unbelievable. I have to tell you a Melody story, because I had two little kids the first time she came. Maybe they were middle school age kids when she came to do some field work, and Eric wasn't with her that time. And we camped out at Great Salt Lake because we had to take samples overnight. We had to collect samples from these stromatolite structures throughout the night because we were interested in genes that do mercury metabolism, and there's some light impacts on the genetic pathways. So every 3 hours we had to take samples. So we set up camp, and I had, of course, to bring my kids along. So my kids are there. We're all camping out together, and Melody starts to tell this story to my kids. And she's just the quirkiest, funniest person. She's from Hawaii. She was a national harp champion or something. She plays the harp, and she's fucking amazing. Anyway, she starts telling this story about these two little kids that they wander into this haunted house, and she starts whispering, and her voice gets really low, and she's like, they walk into the house, and they go into the kitchen, and they open the refrigerator, and do you know what they saw? And my kids are like, what did they see? And she's like, no food. And she's like, and then they went into the next room, and they saw a computer, and they turned it on, and guess what they saw? And they're like, what? And she's like, no internet. We were laughing around.
You have to you really have to know Melody to make sense of that one, for sure. Yeah. I was just, when we were listening to Bonnie's story there, the Steampunk Academy, our host tonight, asked this question: what about the microbes that eat plastic?
Woo! Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. And one of our good friends, a guy, Greg Beckham at National Renewable Energy Lab, and one of my colleagues at Montana State, Jennifer Dubois, are working diligently on figuring those bugs out, but they only eat plastic number 1.
Right.
And what I'm talking about, and sure, we make a shitload of plastic number 1. I'm talking about numbers 2 through 8. That right now there's no good way to degrade that stuff. And I got another comment from John Spear, thinking about interesting field stories, and I have a feeling I know which one he's talking about. But
I don't want to hear this because I love John Spear.
No, it's a good story. It has a happy ending, at least. It wasn't really happy when it happened, but so we're in Oman, and that's at the tip of the Arabian Peninsula on the southern end of it, and it's this really the most spectacular place I've ever been. If you have the opportunity to go, go. But it's situated, I just want to make this clear, you on one edge of it's Yemen, which, you don't want anything to do with Yemen right now, okay? And to the north of it's Saudi Arabia. And then to get there, you have to fly, you fly right along the border between Iraq and Iran.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just like, okay, this is real. And so anyway, we've been warned about how we need to behave, and Oman's a safe place for tourists, and we're over there doing research, and we've been told how to behave. But anybody who knows John Spear knows that he carries this massive camera around with him everywhere he goes, and he has to take like at least 10,000 pictures a day.
Yeah.
And so we drive.
Honestly, his large camera is one of the things I really love about him.
I always remember his large chacos.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, I think that they're like size like 19s or something.
No, 15. They're size 15. He has some made by Chaco.
What are you gonna do? Yeah, and of course they're made out of that shitty ass plastic that nobody can get rid of either. But so even John's is contributing to the problem. That's not good.
That's not good.
We're over in Oman, and we're these like this of Forerunner, or no, they're like Land Cruisers. Like it's a real expedition, and it's just a massive desert. These amazing mountains, camels running around. It's just crazy. It's super neat. And John sees a lady that was herding goats. Husband, presumably husband.
As one does.
And anyway, snapping pictures like John does, and you're not supposed to take pictures of people. John knew that.
John.
The next thing he knows is he's got an AK-47 pointed at him.
Shit, John.
Not good.
Not good, John.
Yeah, not good. And so, when you think about us, all of us soft scientists, just living our cushy lives.
Yeah.
We get 47s pointed, trying to do our research so that we can inform all of the amazing microbes that are out there.
I got
true story.
I got the best question on here. Does eating plastic number 1 make them go number 2? Wait, and also John is verifying size 15. See, I know John's size. Hello.
Yeah, he's a big man. Yeah, they actually shit out the plastic number 1, but it's not. It all occurs on the outside of the cell.
Oh my God.
Good question.
Hey, can I show you some links?
Yeah, please.
So Bonnie and I, we actually don't just always get drunk and hang out with our friends. We also run Great Salt Lake Institute at Westminster College, and you can find us on social media at GSL Institute and at greatsaltlakeinstitute.org. If you need something to do while you're hanging
or
out,
you have kids who need something to do.
What?
Or if you have kids who need something to do.
Or if you have kids you need something to do, you can go to Zooniverse. And one of the projects that we've started is we have motion activated cameras on a very remote island in the middle of Great Salt Lake. That's the second largest breeding population of American white pelicans. And so you should look for the Pelicam project. Get it? It's a total, in my case, a mom joke. But we put these Pelicams up to see what climate change and water diversions, how it might affect the pelicans that rely on these remote islands that predators and people can't get to. And Bonnie and I also wrote a book. It's called The Great Salt Lake Monster Mystery. And you can find us at gslsaltysirens.com or on social media at GSL Salty Sirens. And you can find all sorts of really funny lake swag, like tea towels, both both Bonnie and my husband, they really like to cook. And so we made some tea towels. One of them is Keep Me Wet. And
We're a little edgy.
we think that if Great Salt Lake were able to speak, that she might want to be kept wet.
Yeah.
And we also think that you stink too, because a lot of times people think that our lake stinks. We think it smells like
We're tired of that. We're tired of the lake stinking. We're tired of people thinking that. Like, come on, it smells like science.
Hey, why does it stink? That's all I gotta say.
That's why there's a microscope, dude.
Yeah. Microbes run this world. Either you're gonna realize it and appreciate it, or you're not. Right?
Or you're gonna wear it on a tea towel.
Hey, let's not forget that the reason that we're all hanging out in our houses right now is because of a microbe.
Biology.
Hey, it matters.
It matters.
Just saying.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Eric, thanks for taking time with us.
It was really good.
Oh, here's mine.
Wait. Yeah, you got to take the big one. The big LeBoyd.
You know, if Ketos is watching, I didn't get any beer. And so I'll be down in Salt Lake at some point here, and whoa, I need some of that blonde ale or something.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's some good stuff.
Yeah,
and Sky's got her brine shrimp scarf on. I want to call attention to that because not everybody has a brine shrimp scarf, but everybody should. It's awesome.
Hey, my wife sports her brine shrimp scarf.
Oh.
Even here in Montana.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's cool swag.
I got a tattoo. I've got some shrimp tattoos. How do I show it to you?
Look at that.
I don't know how to show it to you.
Move your head to the left. Yeah, there you go. Wow.
But yeah. This is fun. You guys do a good job. This is neat, and it's a fun forum to invite anybody on and participate. It's really neat. Good for you.
Soup. You know what? Rosalie Winard is on here, and she said, "I love a logo. The Great Salt Lake doesn't stink; it smells like science."
Yeah.
Good to see you, Rosalie. And John Spear loves Zooniverse. I'm just reading.
Well, cool. Thank you, everyone. Eric, Bonnie, and Jaimi, all this was amazing. This is great to kind of hear insight as to the research that you all do and the advocacy, and then some fun stories for sure. And I'm reminded that I stink. I took a shower today.
Especially right now. We don't have to shower.
The the quarantine. I don't know. Showers.
We're all a little nose blind to ourselves.
True. Sky and Justice, thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is great. And so every week we're going to have something going on every Tuesday night. We have some cool stuff coming up. Some opportunities to participate in the Bio Blitz here in the Salt Lake area. We also have people talking about the Dark Skies Initiative and a citizen science project coming up with helping. You can go look for dead birds. So that'll be fun. And hopefully no pelicans. And we'll also be partnering and doing a trivia night too. Once that'll be May 8th. So then hopefully shortly after that, we can all come see each other in bars again and, face to face, but we'll just have to see how the curve goes. Thanks everyone out there watching. Thank you so much. Cheers again.
Cheers.
Anything else?
I just want to say that I made the logo or the You Stink Too and the Keep Me Wet.
You did. You were awesome.
Says both those things to me on a regular basis.
Everybody needs to. I really think you should sell yourself to scientists. You may not have thought about this, Sky, but you should sell your soul to science.
I've been trying, but I'm bad at math.
But our scientists are generally bad at communicating, and so we need the artists and the communicators and the designers.
Oh yeah. Also, I have to thank the Utah Arts Alliance because they are a player. They are also doing a lot of the groundwork for getting us sponsorships and spreading the word about what we do. And they've been a wonderful partner for us when we could do in-house events at the Urban Arts Gallery. Once that opens up again, we'll be back there. But for now, thank you, Utah Arts Alliance. And
I see Marissa on here. Thanks, Marissa. Marissa says, cheers, everyone. We're awesome. Is she in the other room, Eric?
Yeah, I keep her locked in the other room for sure. No, she's been the one refilling this when you. True. That's true.
Yeah, she's pretty happy with us. Hi, Marissa. Thanks for letting
I'm cutting you all off. Thank you very
Remember,
much.
everyone, stay the fuck home.
Stay home indeed. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.